Let's continue. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to our Connecting During COVID event. We want to make sure that you're aware that this meeting is going to be recorded. My name is Ama Ajapan. I am an at-large delegate for GPSA, and I'll be moderating this event along with Brooke.
Oh, hi, everyone. I'm Brooke Mattern. I'm the GPSA delegate for the College of Health and Human Development. And like Amma said, I'm going to be the second moderator tonight. Um, so both Amma and I are also members of GPSA's Advocacy and Diversity Committee, which is the committee that put this event together tonight. This organization is meant to be a bit of a follow-up to the town hall event that we had back in September. What makes this event different is from the town hall is that you can now directly ask representatives from offices and organizations at Penn State your questions rather than seeking information from other students. Also, a lot has changed since September. We're now completely remote, and the spring semester is approaching in the near future. So we felt like this was a good time to have an event like this and that it could be beneficial to all of the graduate and professional students.
Right. Before we get started, I want to explain the layout for tonight. So we have a panel of 14 of the representatives from different Penn State offices and organizations with us. And we're going to start with about 20 to 30 minutes of introduction, allowing each panelist to tell you a little bit about your office or organization, and also what services and resources they provide for grad students. Following the introductions, we will open the floor up for you to ask your questions to the panelists. And we ask that when we start the question portion of the event, we actually use the raise hand function to indicate that you have a question. Wait to be called on by myself or Brooke before speaking. To make this process easier, we are requesting that you make your Zoom, you make sure Zoom is displaying your name. And if you do wish, also add your pronouns. We're also going to ask that if you are one of the panelists, you include your office or organization in parentheses after your name. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start. And our first panelist is to be presenting is from the Center of Sexual and Gender Diversity.
Sounds great. Thank you all so much for the invitation to be joining you here tonight. So my name is Brian Pichkowski. I utilize the pronouns he, him, his, and I'm the director of our Center for Sexual and Gender Diversity at Penn State. And so I actually will have us go to the next slide and think a little bit about our mission as a center. Really, formulates around, 3 or 4 different tenets of practice, education, advocacy, and outreach. And so the center provides a variety of educational opportunities, both on sexual and gender diversity, but also the intersections of identity outside of that. We do a variety of advocacy around and policy change around a variety, in various contexts, but also a good deal of social support. And I would encourage that to be addressed in terms of undergraduate, graduate communities, but also across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And our outreach is really creating some really strong connections, both in the local community here in State College, but also across the Commonwealth, in that, maybe some of our university resources are not the perfect resources for the student communities that access us. And so, we have built and continue to build some strong partnerships with students experiencing distress in a variety of different identity-based dimensions. But again, the 3 tenets of the center are really around education, outreach, and advocacy. I think we can advance to the next slide. Some of you may be really familiar with some of the work that we do, some of you may not be. And so there's a lot on this screen right now, but as, again, thinking back about those 3 tenets, the education, the support, the outreach, and engagement, the center offers a variety of opportunities. When we think about our work, I really encourage us to think about us on a pipeline of engagement. So whether you're just coming out or you're a graduate student or a faculty or staff member trying to get involved around sexual and gender diversity and advocacy and equity conversations, there should be a place and a space for you to fit into the work, but also work with us to work towards institutional change. And so our educational opportunities are on the screen. We have a network, Safer People, Safer Places, serves our graduate communities as well as our faculty and staff. in thinking, you know, I'm going to be very graduate specific right now. We offer a variety of safer sex programming and supplies. And so, you know, again, safer sex and sex positivity around all of our communities. We provide those supplies. We also provide personal hygiene supplies for folks that may need those. And so those are available in our physical location. We've done some mailing of those things over the COVID time period. So as folks needed those and they've reached out, we've provided those still because of, again, physical access and engagement. But know that those are in our lower level 011 Hub Robeson Center, our center that opened last January. We also do, you know, we have started and have really tried to embed anti-racism programming throughout our education and are embedding that across our sexual and gender diversity work. As again, you know, as we open the new center, we are now co-located with the Paul Robeson Cultural Center on campus. And our commitment to racial justice, you know, we are not perfect, and nor are many of our, you know, marginalized communities. It doesn't mean because we're marginalized, we all get along. But I think there's systemic issues that we need to address and we're called to address. And we've been embedding that programming. There's been a good deal of folks across the university environment and across the Commonwealth engaged in our programming this year. And I think, you know, COVID has created some inequities, but also opportunities and increasing engagement around our anti-racism practice. That will continue into the spring, so stay tuned. Our mentorship program also and our discussion groups also apply to our graduate students. You know, we have graduates serving as our mentors, graduate students leading our discussion groups and engaging in those groups, as well as a variety of scholarship opportunities that also are present. And so, again, there's some other things up here and I can answer questions about those later. I'm going to jump to the next slide quickly. And one of the graduate, you know, focus pieces of our work, you know, in the last, you know, few years, we had done a bunch of surveys around, you know, what are the aspects of the graduate student experience that we are not addressing, or what are the experiences that we're not addressing in student life as a whole. Graduate student experiences were part of that. And so just about a year and a half ago, we went to student fee, which serves our graduate communities as well. You pay into that. And really decided to develop a program committed to our graduate communities. And in COVID, it's been a bit challenging, but in the last year or so, we have created better community circles or community circles that now exist and didn't in the past. Specific coffee hours and gatherings, socials and mixtures, discussion groups on experiences for graduate students, the variety of ways to do, you know, praxis and research around LGBTQ issues. These all came out of survey responses of working with graduate students and what they wanted from our services. And so we are striving to provide more, but I think that will be a constant endeavor. I think, again, gratitude to the Student Fee Board for providing this. And during COVID, again, we've continued to adjust. I'm going to jump to the next slide. Talking about COVID is something I think is really important. It's in front of us. We've been experiencing it, but I did want to highlight some of the concerns that our communities have been experiencing. And these are from a national survey, and I'll jump to that next slide. Just to highlight, and you know, some of you may be aware, some of you may not be, but our active work in the center right now has really been addressing heightened disparity around not only, you know, our students of color, but our sexual and gender diverse students. We know COVID has heightened the disparities that existed around health disparity for many of our marginalized communities previously. So basic needs, academic and financial related, we know folks have been struggling. Food security, housing insecurity. We know increased substance abuse, psychological distress, social isolation, and emotional support have been things we've been entertaining as a staff and supporting folks, you know, undergraduate and graduate. Rejection by family members, but also, you know, thinking about domestic violence, intimate partner violence around queer communities have also been something that's been heightened as people have been isolated and has been present within our graduate circles and communities. And then I also, you know, really think it's important to note that the multiple marginalizations here in some of the survey data that we have been recognizing and also, you know, serving our students in, is that, you know, our LGBTQ students of color are absolutely bearing a heightened burden around racial oppression in the current cultural context that we're you know, experiencing. And so, again, the need for anti-racism practice is something that will continue and will be embedded in our work, and would look forward to any of the ways that, you know, I know this is a quick overview, but ways that our graduate communities can be connected and continue to be connected as we evolve as a center and organization. So again, thank you for that quick overview, and again, would welcome questions later on.
All right, thank you. Next, we have university libraries.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Haley Fargo. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Student Engagement Coordinator in the University Libraries. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the libraries. So on the next slide, the purpose of the libraries, I tried to kind of fine tune this. We all know the library exists, but specifically for your graduate student context, the library is a collection of resources. They're physical, they're digital, and I also think that people are a big part of it as well. And we're here to help you complete your degree and do the research that you want to do. So we're here even in the pandemic and make sure that you have the access to the information that you need so that you can continue the work that you're up to. So on the next slide, the first way that we're supporting is really thinking about how you're getting your primary and secondary sources. So in the pandemic, you can still request books from our collection. And when there are digitized copies available, you can access those as well. Some of you might have heard about HathiTrust. I don't have time to dive into it right now, but I'm happy to take questions on it if you have specific questions about kind of how we're thinking about access during the pandemic. For those items that are physically available or items that you request through interlibrary loan, we are doing curbside pickup right now with Petit Paterno. And if you're not at University Park, several of our other campuses across the Commonwealth are also doing curbside pickup services as well. And so in this service, you schedule a pickup time once your items are in. And we're continuing to get user feedback and making changes. Hopefully we're moving to a self-service model in the near future as well, which would give you more flexibility to pick up the items when is best and most convenient for you. As I mentioned, our interlibrary loan services are still happening as well. So we're still up and running. You can request digital items as well as physical items, and they're doing a lot of really great work in this time. We also have our subject librarian. So if you don't know who your subject liaison is, we can chat about how to find that person, but that's the person that's making a lot of the collection decisions around what physical resources we have available and what digital ones we have immediate access to. So if you are having issues or you really think something needs to be in the collection, that is the person that's going to be able to make that change or have that conversation with you. So they are here in the pandemic and are excited and willing to help you with your research. And finally, then another way to think about getting sources is our Ask a Librarian feature. So that's a chat feature we have on our website. It's a really great way to get a quick answer if you're running into some sort of access issue, you have a question about Petit Paterno, picking something up, you can chat with them, get an answer right away. My final slide is also thinking about the other people that are available to help. So as you think about your research, there are different types of research support that we provide. So a couple of them, we've got really great statistical support. So if you're running a survey, you've got a lot of data in an Excel document, you're not quite sure what sort of analysis you might want to do, we've got great folks that can help you with that. Also data management, sometimes we've got a lot of files, maybe they're named differently. We want to think about how we're best putting our data together. We've got support for that. We also have things like software support in the past, and right now we're running things like an R workshop that's over a period of time. So if you're trying to learn some of that specialized software, we've got folks that can help with that. We have geospatial information support, access to government documents as a federal depository library, and also special collections are unique and rare items. Most of the people that can help you with some of the beginning research support on this bulleted list come from our research informatics and publishing department. I'll put the link to their department in the chat, and that's where you can find emails and different things like that to set up personalized appointments. We also run workshops throughout the year as well. And finally, my last note is that if you're not quite sure where to go in the library, what sort of help you need, you can think about me as a resource as well. So I'm a big connector. I connect people to different parts of the library. The library is really big. It can be confusing. And so I can be here to help you figure out what you need as well. So thank you. And I look forward to questions later on.
I don't see the DISSA representatives, so I think we can go to the next one and hopefully they'll come later.
Okay.
Okay, hi everybody. I think I took a different approach and crammed it all on one slide. But my name is Leah Zimmerman and I'm the Executive Director of Student Disability Resources. So thanks for including us tonight. We have a few charges in our office. So number one, it's our responsibility in Student Disability Resources to make sure that students with disabilities are not discriminated against. Number two, it's our responsibility to ensure equal access to programs, services, activities, and facilities at Penn State. So basically what that means is that we really are meant to ensure an inclusive and accessible educational experience for students with disabilities. As mandated by federal laws. We're unique in that we're operating under a couple of federal laws, the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Rehabilitation Act. And lastly, we provide reasonable accommodations that mitigate or reduce the impact of a student's disability on their academic functioning. We have an office at every single campus, and we're right now serving probably just over 2% of all graduate students across Penn State. In reality, probably somewhere closer to 11% of graduate students across the country probably have a disability, but on average, only around 2%, like I said, are actually coming forward and seeking services like those in our office. A big part of that is because the majority of disability types that we're serving are actually hidden. So these are not readily apparent. These are not easily observed disability types. And that makes some students nervous to come forward because they're worried about how they might be perceived, especially in a rigorous graduate program. So I just want everybody to recognize that that's the majority is not easy to be seen. And so we help students navigate that and work through that. We are very much known for providing academic accommodations, and you'll probably have heard that we provide things like extended test time, maybe note-taking assistance, and that might be all well and good for graduate programs, but I want to mention that we offer a heck of a lot more based on where you are in your program and what your needs are. The graduate programs can be more complex in terms of what accommodation types might be needed. So it might be things like extra time on qualifying or comprehensive exams. It could be that we offer or set up a mock comprehensive exam experience prior to the actual thing. It might be extended deadlines, or it might be extended or flexibility in absences in your program. It also could get into your roles such as teaching assistant work or graduate assistant work. Anything that's required of your program, we can help, and we can provide accommodations in those arenas as well if they're part of your work of being a student. And we're, again, our bread and butter, what we are legally mandated to do is provide accommodations. And so we're very much known in the academic area, but I want to mention that we're trying to expand our services because a successful student is also socially engaged. So we are working to more comprehensively support our students and offer some different social integration opportunities. So we're expanding now to include things like workshops, student support groups, affinity groups, mentorship, fellowship opportunities. So please know that we are more than just the academic accommodation piece, and we'd really just love for anybody to connect with us if they're uncertain about what we can do, so we can start the conversation and see what we can accomplish together.
Next, we're going to have student care and advocacy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Anna Barone. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm the Director of Student Care and Advocacy at Penn State. We refer to ourselves as a small but mighty team. We're housed like on University Park's campus in State College, but we serve as a liaison across the Commonwealth and even with World Campus. You can move to the next slide. We are, oh my gosh, I can't even see that, it's so small. Our mission is to connect students with the necessary resources and support in times of crisis. So officially by name, we've been in existence since 2016. This work was being done kind of in a patchwork way by many different people until then, when they decided we needed to kind of carve out a specific office. So we stood up this team. I have 2 case managers and an admin assistant. I think in layman's terms, or just to kind of help understand what sets us apart outside of other departments within student affairs and other divisions, is we're kind of like the social work entity of the university. So we make sure that students who are going through something they didn't expect, which is kind of all of us right now, but we existed before the pandemic too, and we were busy then. And honestly, we've still been busy now, but my colleagues across the entire university have contributed to helping our office support students, but also faculty and staff, because we really all are experiencing something we didn't expect. But it impacts all of us a little bit differently, depending on a lot of different factors. So we are just here to make sure that if whatever a person is going through impacts maybe their housing security, their food security, their ability to take care of themselves, connect with care, we just make sure that they're aware of resources and get to kind of pick what resources to take advantage of, what feels most comfortable. We make sure that they stay in the driver's seat, metaphorically. We, are mindful of the balance of challenge and support. So we want to make sure that as much as a student can be kind of part of getting themselves to more stable ground to kind of get their footing, we want them to do that. But sometimes a person, depending on what they're going through, really kind of can't. And so we help fill in the gaps. So we're very customized when we're working with students. We certainly serve graduate students. In fact, we serve a lot of graduate students. We're the stewards of our student emergency fund at the university, just kind of our central emergency fund. We helped a lot of graduate students, a lot of international graduate students, specifically with in the wake of COVID-19, because international students and World Campus students weren't eligible for the federally funded CARES Act awards. So we partnered with a lot of people to make sure that all Penn State students, no matter their background or demographics, were getting kind of equitable as best we could, not always equal, but equitable. So to kind of, again, provide the margin that we all need. If any of you are studying or maybe even are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we really start at the bottom. We make sure that students, first of all, have those basic needs secured. And then we move to safety and security. And then only then, when those needs are met, can we even, can a person, a human, even start to think about belonging and connecting with community. And then only then are they able to really live to their full potential, not just graduate, but successfully complete courses. So we're really mindful of that. Next slide. So this is our team. So myself, Patrick Clark, and Tahita Alexander, they're both our case managers. Pat comes from family-based social work in the community. So that's cool that this is the first time. He's been with us for, I think, 3 years now, but this is the first time he's ever worked at an institution for higher ed. And then Tahita came with a lot of experience specifically in residence life from student affairs. So together, I think if you add up, our total skill set, we are able to cover a lot of the gaps, and students can even kind of select which one of us they would like to work with as a case manager if they particularly, depending on what they're going through, lean one way or the other to kind of a skill set or a person. And then Debbie, our administrative assistant, is kind of the glue that keeps us all together. Next slide. So this is actually a picture of the sign outside our door. We have been working remotely, but we don't want to feel at a distance from you, even though we're kind of at a distance physically. We don't want to kind of connection-wise feel distant. So we have every workday, every weekday, Monday to Friday, we have drop-in hours from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where you could just kind of join our Zoom meeting. There's a waiting room if we're already meeting with someone, but we're able to kind of consult with you. You could also pop in if you're worried about a friend, so you don't always have to be coming by to talk about yourself. We also have a generic just email address, studentcare@psu.edu. If you want to reach out for yourself or someone else, we have an online report form as well. We have a phone number that you can call. And then Penn State has the 24/7 crisis line, and it's a call line and a text line. I'm not trying to kind of step on Caps's toes. I saw Ben hop on, but that's actually a line that I think is, well, it's utilized more than I initially thought it would be. Not just by people calling, getting help for themselves, but again, calling to get tips on how to help a friend, how to help a family member that might be connected with the university. So that's another thing. So that's kind of how we're trying to show up for you all. Graduate students are not excluded from this support. I know it's hard to be so far apart, but I want you to know that we are here to kind of learn more about what's going on for you and make sure you know about what's available and then help you select what you need. So thanks again for including us today, and I'll be happy to answer any questions toward the end about anything I didn't kind of elaborate enough on.
Okay, next we have the student insurance advocacy.
Okay, and I'm going to apologize. I do not have the department name after my name, so I apologize up front. I'm Karen Klein, the manager for student insurance. Natasha Gates is our student insurance advocate. I'm going to try to go through these slides quickly because I think she thought she had more time than we are allotted. So that being said, the reason that we had hired this position is because we were moving to the university insurance requirement. That has halted for the moment. It's not gone, but it is halted. And with that, we wanted somebody that could work with graduate students as well as undergraduate students regarding these types of things that you see on the screen in front of you. The outreach and support, meeting with student groups, helping students who are underinsured or not insured find insurance. And especially with our graduate students, if you're coming off of your aging off your parents, she can help with that Medicaid application and help you find what's going to be your best option depending on what your specific situation is. Go ahead and go to the next. Thank you. So since 2019, this is when she started, September of 2019, and she'd done 50 presentations. She's worked with over 100 grad students and 50 graduate students, helping them get assistance. And you can see she's helped with Medicaid, the aging off, what assistance programs, if you've got a specific med. She's helped with claims resolution, regarding like, oh, you're losing your Penn State assistantship, and especially working with students that have out-of-state Medicaid that may be looking for other options because their insurance isn't working for them. Go ahead. So I'm hoping they're going to provide these slides to you all later. This kind of gives some of the options that students have and what category they could fall into, because you could have private insurance, you can be uninsured, or you can have the Penn State student health insurance plans. So these are the categories that most students fall into. And again, there's only a mandate for international students in the Penn State College of Medicine, so which are also graduate students. They have an insurance requirement because of their accreditation down there. Go ahead. So if you're looking for resources on the Student Health Insurance Office or about the Penn State Student Health Insurance Plan, we also call it the Penn State SHIP. You can get hold of us via our website. You can get hold of us via our phone. We also have an email, which I see is not on here, which is uhs-insurance@psu.edu. First Risk Advisors is our account managers, and United Healthcare Student Resources is our student insurance plan. So there's options to reach out if you're having questions about anything. This was just something that Natasha has put together about, is your insurance going to work for you at near the campus you're attending? So these are questions that your students should be looking at, especially as they consider insurance options. If you've got if you've got a specific health need, you're going to want to know that you can reach out to the providers in the area and get the services you need. Here at University Park, we do have the University Health Services, but there's not a health center like University Health Services at most of the other campuses. There is a health and wellness at Altoona, and Barron and Erie also has one. Penn State Medical Center has the Fishburne Road Clinic, but that is a physician practice and it is only available to the College of Medicine students. So if you want to go ahead. These are just some considerations if you're eligible for Medicaid, who's eligible, things like if you have an out-of-state Medicaid, you're typically only going to be covered if you have emergency care in Pennsylvania, if you're not from Pennsylvania. So there's some things that can be looked at to determine, are you eligible for Medicaid here in state or not? Because there are some very specific requirements. Like if you are on somebody else's insurance and considered a dependent on their taxes, you're not eligible for Medicaid. But if you're on your own and you're not on somebody else's taxes, you may, as a student, be eligible for medical assistance. And most students fall into that category if they are on their own. So again, these are just some guidelines that if you're questioning, you can look at this, or you can reach out to our advocate. Go ahead. Again, these are some resources for our uninsured students. If you're aging off your parents, you may want to be looking at what options are available to you, whether you go for purchasing something off of healthcare.gov, looking for your own insurance on your own, looking for an insurance that may just cover your mental health, or is there some mental health services you need that you don't want to pay for the insurance, but there's some other options. If you have prescriptions that you can't afford, there are prescription medication programs to help pay for some of those medications. And again, the student insurance advocate can help with those situations as well. So this was a flyer that Natasha had put together just to kind of help understand that she's there. Go ahead. And if you go to our studentaffairs.psu.edu /health, and then just do //health insurance, you can find our health insurance website. So there is a spot directly on the website that has her information, and you're welcome to reach out to her at any time if you have any questions or concerns that can use some assistance. And that's all I have. I look forward to answering any questions that you may have.
All right, next we have student legal services.
Great. Hi, everyone. So I'm Kelly Moraz. I'm the director at Student Legal Services. The easiest way to explain our office is that we are a little law office that's here for students, and everything we do is free. Everything we do is confidential. The attorneys, we have 4 attorneys at the office, all of whom are licensed attorneys in Pennsylvania. So that's just a huge resource that's available to students for free. We're only available currently to University Park students. We're looking at hopefully potentially expanding that to Commonwealth campuses, but for right now, we're funded entirely by University Park students' activity fees. And so we are limited to that campus. We can go to the next slide, thanks. So what we do, you may not be able to see the cartoon because everything got a little small once you go to screen sharing, but I like the cartoon because it kind of illustrates the fact that what we do, he's holding up a cheese slice and saying not only to be free, but to be wrapped separately. We don't advocate for sort of students as a whole. So we're not out there trying to sort of do these big class actions and big things. We're helping each individual student with their personal legal needs and helping them figure out what's best for them and help them pursue what makes the most sense for them, not sort of the group as a whole. And so that's our role as each client individually. I put a list here of some of the more common types of things we do. It's really a surprisingly wide range. We have 4 attorneys all from different backgrounds. And so we're able to offer quite a bit of different kinds of things, civil matters, criminal matters, immigration. We can do advice. We can also do representation in certain situations. And we do referrals. The level of service depends on the situation. Whenever I talk about what we can do, I do have to mention there are things we can't do. So referrals are going to happen in situations where the university is the opposing party or where there's 2 students on either side of a dispute. So we're not going to pick between who to help more or less. We're going to provide referrals to everyone. So there are times when we provide referrals. We try to identify those situations as early as possible to not make a difficult situation even more frustrating for someone. But there are some limitations on how much we can help in every situation. So that's, I think, the baseline, and then I'm happy to answer questions if folks want to know more about that office.
Okay, next we have the Office of Graduate Educational Equity Programs.
You can go to the next slide. So my name is Stephanie Danette Preston. I serve as the Associate Dean for Graduate Educational Equity, as well as the Chief Diversity Officer for Graduate Education. Next slide, please. The Office of Graduate Educational Equity Programs leads the graduate school's efforts to foster diversity and provide a welcoming climate for both prospective and current graduate students of underrepresented groups. Next slide. Just so that I can slow it down, because this is me. We have a very small team, and my team has joined us today. I know Dr. Dinkins is on the line and Mr. Price is on the line. They house the two wings of the office, which I can explain a little bit later, and they'll be able to tag team when it comes to question and answering. Our office has the graduate educational equity side and then the Ronald E. McNair side. The Ronald E. McNair side typically focuses on our undergraduate students currently at Penn State, and it's a pipeline to PhD program. Whereas the graduate educational equity side also focuses with regards to a focus on recruitment of underrepresented students from diverse backgrounds, as well as retention, as well as a number of other advocacies in a number of other advocacy spaces at Penn State. I apologize, I can't act right today. And so we have a couple of mission-driven goals. We recruit, we collaborate, we develop, we provide, we seek, we support, and we offer a safe space. The office was founded in 1987, so that makes us a little bit older than most of the offices online, but we're still here, still thriving, and still small. Next slide, please. So out of the office, a number of different programs run through our office. So we have the Summer Research Opportunities Program, which is an 8-week experience for underrepresented students who are interested in Penn State. So it's a recruitment tool. And I'll jump to the next recruitment tool in that list and bypass McNair Scholars Program just for a second. We also house the STEM Open House, which is another sort of recruitment effort that we use. And that is our speed networking with faculty, staff, and graduate students, where we ask for our graduate students to participate and give the real deal about what Penn State is about, the good, the bad, the ugly. We are very truthful when it comes to the Penn State experience. Alongside that, we have the Sloan Scholars Program, which is housed in our office. And I think we have a number of Sloan Scholars on the call today. And it's a program that's housed outside of the university. So we're a university center for exemplary mentoring. And around that, we do a lot of programming for our students of color that are in the STEM disciplines. And it's a program that helps enhance their experience here at Penn State, and it comes with a scholarship top off. And finally, our McNair Scholars Program, which I mentioned earlier, it's funded through the Department of Education, and it's for first-generation low-income students, and it's the pipeline to PhD program. Next slide. Other responsibilities, we advocate for students on a number of different occasions and work with a number of the offices on this particular call. A lot of what we do focuses around student cases and advocacy. Uh-oh, that wasn't, thank you. We work with a number of different offices on the call just to make sure our students feel comfortable and to foster community. We've gone to bat for students when it comes to academics, a number of different things when it comes to ability status, working with our graduate programs and making sure that our students are heard and they're treated equitably and fairly inside of the departments and colleges. Other things that we're responsible for, I mentioned recruitment efforts. We have a number of recruitment programs, but a lot of what I do and a lot of what my staff does is we travel to recruit students and to foster partnerships with our HSIs, our HBCUs, and our TSIs. Hispanically serving institutions, HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, and TSIs, tribal colleges and institutions. We offer fee waivers for domestic students who meet requirements, and those requirements typically are to engage with our multicultural leaders within the colleges. There are multicultural leaders in every college, and they are colleagues and partners in this process. And if you know about Button and Waller were the first African-American graduates of Penn State, and there is an assistantship in their name and honor. And so I work with the Office of Graduate Fellowships and Awards to make sure that we do check-ins with our students who are awarded these assistantships, to ensure their success throughout their time here. Outside of that, we also offer professional development opportunities and professional development engagement that happens maybe twice a semester. And that would happen also with our partners in the colleges and some student organizations, the Black Graduate Student Association, as well as the Minority Engineering Graduate Association. I think that's right. Multicultural, not minority. And overall, we're here for most students. And I know that I've mentioned domestic students of color, but low-income first-generation students. And we've seen a variety of students that come through our office. All students are welcome. The more the merrier, diversity is key. Next slide. If you need to find me, there's this wonderful woman, her name is Tammy Dudick. Her email address is there. Trust me, fill up her email address, or you can send an email to our office. And on my staff, there is, like I said, Mr. Price, Dr. Dinkins. There's also John Twitey, who is the coordinator for McNair, and Tammy Dudick, who keeps us all together. And if you send an email to ogee@psu.edu, that goes to everyone in the office, and they will be able to respond to you as well as myself. Thank you.
Okay, next we have CAPS.
Good evening, everyone. Who do I have to thank for my slide? Oh, well done. Thank you, Claire.
Very basic, sorry. I
I
couldn't
love
find a
it.
logo.
All right, so in the chat, I put the most important thing, which is a link to our website. All the information is there, and I'm just going to offer a couple of quick comments. So Ben Locke, Senior Director, Counseling and Psychological Services. I've been here at Penn State for going on 18 years. After I came here after postdoc, thinking I'd be here for a year or two and then head out somewhere else. So be careful if you're currently here, you might get trapped. So I represent a little over 60 professionals who work in counseling and psych services at University Park. There's another 50 or so individuals who work across the Commonwealth campuses in the provision of mental health services. At University Park, we represent a comprehensive counseling center providing a full range of short-term mental health services, anything from same-day crisis appointments to psychiatry, case management, individual counseling, group counseling, same-day drop-in groups, CAPS chat, and a wide range of kind of wellness, well-being services that are available online. Anna mentioned the Penn State crisis line before. That's one I just like to bump. We started that in 2016. It is one number for all students at all campuses and anybody who's concerned about a student or a student who's concerned about somebody else and you need some advice, 24/7 available to you. And then it's also accompanied by the Penn State crisis text line, which is also an option. We have a lot of services listed out on our website that are sort of self-help, easy access, online kinds of services. The one I'd like to point everybody to tonight is u.psu.edu, you.psu.edu, which is a sort of comprehensive well-being portal for Penn State University. You log in, put in some information about yourself, and it will dynamically point you to resources that will help you be well in whatever way you particularly need to be well, whether that is academics and career, mental health and wellness, or belonging and how meaning making in the world. All Penn State resources at most of the campuses, well, Penn State resources at all of the campuses are in there, along with a curated collection of resources from across the web, as well as custom built content for what's happening today, such as how to deal with procrastination during COVID. And if there's ever been a grad student out there who hasn't procrastinated, well, that's a unique story. So whatever it is, that's a great place to start. You'll find all kinds of resources that will get you moving. And the thing that I've been saying over and over again, a little bit like a broken record, since March 13th of 2019, when I got off of my Disney cruise. By the way, I got on the cruise the day after, or actually the day before the government said, whatever you do, don't get on a Disney cruise. Don't get on a cruise. But I'm happy to say that we got off the cruise. It was a completely fine trip. We made it home. But since that day, March 13th forward, I've been saying, CAPS is open, just call. If you have concerns about yourself or somebody else, if you have needs, if you're wondering if what kinds of resources might be available to you during remote operation, you don't have to guess, you don't have to look it up on a website or try to figure it out. Just call us and we will help you sort through the details. That's our job. So I'm going to stop there. Look forward to the conversation.
All right, next is the COVID Operations Control Center.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Kelly Walgast, and I'm the director of the COVID Operations Control Center here at Penn State. I think we're the youngest entity here at the university, spurred on by the pandemic that took us all by storm early this year. And so my role is really to lead all COVID operations for the entire university across the Commonwealth, and be the senior advisor to the president and the executive leadership team about plans, processes, operations, on-ramps, off-ramps, data, and anything related to how we as a university go about managing operations and essentially being able to thrive as best as possible during a very challenging pandemic conditions. We all know all the services that you heard tonight, really, I've touched base, I think, with every single one of them in the few short months that I've been in this role because of the way the pandemic has impacted everything and our students and our employees as we go through that, and our campus, the physical part of our campuses. And so that's my role. And I'm here tonight. I'm happy to answer the questions that you may have about what I can share with regard to the truth as it is today. The dynamics of this pandemic are ever changing. We live within the Commonwealth and the governor's rules, as well as our federal government, and what we can do and can't do, and what I think is on the horizon coming forward. So I'm definitely here to answer questions about any of that. Our services, of course, are related to testing, tracing, isolation, quarantine, and protecting the health of Penn Staters and our university communities. That's really why I'm here to do this role, and I'm pleased to be able to serve in this capacity. As some of you know, my home base is the College of Nursing, right? I'm an assistant dean at the College of Nursing and an associate teaching professor. So I definitely have that background in healthcare, and I have an extensive military background. So understanding these operations from a large scale is pretty familiar to me. So while these have not been perfect, and these have been some bumpy road, without a doubt, we've come a long way, and we've had some real success in able to be able to keep our campus operations and as much engagement with our students as possible in the conditions. And spring is just around the corner. So thank you all for inviting me tonight. I look forward to the conversation.
Okay, next is the Coalition of Graduate Employees.
Hi everyone, so my name is Bailey Campbell. I use she, her pronouns. I am a third-year graduate student in electrical engineering. And so CGE is a group of graduate employees at Penn State organizing to improve our working conditions through forming a union. And what does CGE do? Well, we build power through direct action. And so some of those direct actions, I'm sure a lot of people saw over the summer, letter writing, various protests, etc. But I'm sure it's no secret that CGE is working to organize a union. Next slide, please. And so what is the union? A union could just be framed as a group of people, that is a group of workers that work at a workplace, getting together and working with their bosses to get a legally binding contract that guarantees things like wages, benefits, working conditions, etc. But I think a better way to define what a union is us, graduate employees. In this case, would be what the union is. It is those people who work at that workplace that make up the union. That is the union. Next slide, please. And so what could a union achieve? Well, we can look at groups like Harvard. Their graduate employee union won their first contract over the summer, and they got a ton of wins. They got increased pay, they got guaranteed health protections, they got many other legal protections. But that is essentially the big thing that a union works to achieve is a legally binding contract between the employees, us graduate employees, and their workplace, in this case, Penn State. And so over here on the left side, you can see all of the different things. These are all examples of things that have been won from various unions in their contracts. And I believe all of these come from graduate unions and contracts that they won. And so I know that was super short. I'm kind of hoping for some good questions during the question and answer round. But if you want to know more about us, you can check out our website on the right side and then come to our meeting on the first Wednesday. We're back from school. You'll see more on our social media accounts and we'll let you know.
Okay, next we have the Black Graduate Student Association. Is the representative for them here?
I don't think the main representative that was going to introduce them is here.
Okay, then we will move forward to the Graduate Alliance for Diversity and Inclusion.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sabrina. I am the steering committee head for the Graduate Alliance for Diversity and Inclusion. Next slide. Thank you. So this is our mission statement that I just wanted to represent because it was a statement collectively written by our members. We are a group that was founded in 2017 within the College of Liberal Arts in response to graduate students wanting a greater sense of belonging across different departments in the College of Liberal Arts, and also amidst concerns about recruiting diverse graduate students, as well as providing programs, policies, and resources for graduate students related to diversity and inclusion. Next slide. So our meetings and like all of the work that we do are organized through these different committees that we have. The steering committee provides kind of overarching procedural and organizational guidance in terms of setting priorities or goals for the organization based on feedback we get from the other committees about what they would like to focus on for the year. We also have a social or community committee that focuses specifically on community building in terms of creating networking opportunities, organizing social events like trivia night, kind of fall organization, different things that we've done this year. We also had a book club that we have on a regular kind of month-to-month basis, where we kind of vote on different books around diversity and inclusion conversations and have discussions. Also, this isn't necessarily a branch of the social committee, but we also have a group called Intersections, which is an identity-based group for graduate students that are facing gender and racial discrimination or marginalization. We also have a public affairs committee that's more focused on policy advocacy. A really great thing that they've done this year is putting together a survey throughout different departments, asking graduate students about what they know about graduate stipends and like wanting to know whether those conversations are transparent within the department. And next semester, I know that the committee really wants to focus on the concerns that were brought up in those responses and kind of getting a broader range of responses from graduate students about those issues. We also have an education and training committee that focuses on knowledge sharing. A lot of times they're focused on bringing in speakers on diversity and inclusion, as well as holding workshops that we feel members express that they would be interested in learning about, whether it's writing a diversity statement is one workshop that we recently had. Another thing I wanted to mention is that we this year were able to, through the Associate Dean and Dean's Office of the College of Liberal Arts, advocate for a GADI RA administrative assistant. So this is a graduate student that gets a teaching release to do a lot of the administrative labor associated with our group in terms of the steering committee kind of hearing from all the other committees about like, hey, we would like to focus on this, we would like resources on this, and that graduate assistant does a lot of research on that. And they also help organize our meetings, creating a weekly newsletter about different resources for graduate students, and also creating a website for us that helps with that as well. I will also mention that this year, oh, sorry, I can get to that now. The steering committee this year, with conversations with the dean and associate dean of the College of Arts, were able to create an award that we will be beginning next semester. There's 2 different awards we want to provide for graduate students. One on a research paper related to diversity and inclusion, and also one on service work related to diversity and inclusion. And we want to stress that the members really were advocating for this because we wanted to honor graduate student labor with both research and service, and also create the panel or the committee that will be reviewing the application materials would be made up only of graduate students. So that's coming up in the spring. Next slide. So to get involved, you can check out our website, which is sites.psu.edu/GADI. So this includes contact information for our committee heads if you're interested in joining or learning more about a specific committee. You can also join our email list there where you can get access to our weekly newsletter and upcoming events. Our research assistant also has created a graduate student resource guide for navigating life as a graduate student at Penn State. So this is information about community groups and student-led initiatives, affordable housing resources, free tax assistance, a lot of kind of the information that we've gotten from a lot of the groups that have presented before me, though a lot of information we'll probably add. And we also have a Facebook group that is literally just the Graduate Alliance for Diversity and Inclusion, if you'd like to join. I look forward to hearing any questions you have.
All right, last but not least, we have GPSA.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diego Hernandez. I am the Advocacy and Diversity Committee Chair, the committee responsible for putting this event on tonight. I'm going to be super brief so that we can have a good amount of time for questions. GPSA's main mission is to represent and be a unified voice for the graduate and professional students at the university. We are the officially recognized organization by the Board of Trustees, and we have pretty much every single college represented, not just this year, but also last year. So I want to encourage everyone to reach out to your representatives of your college, find out who they are, come to them with questions, concerns, ideas. And you're also more than welcome to come to our assembly meetings, which happen every other Wednesday. You can find more information about the meetings and open student forum at gpsapsu.edu. I'll drop that in the chat, and I'm going to have this be it so that we can move on to questions.
So really quickly, I think Letitia is going to say like a few words about BGSA because the original BGSA person couldn't be here. Yeah, sorry, go for it.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. My name is Letitia Franklin, and I'm the current president of the Black Graduate Student Association. We have listed here the rest of our executive board. BGSA serves as a community and an organization that supports Black students as well as allies in professional development as well as social development. I am not too sure what the next slides contain, so go to the next one. Yes, so that is what I just said. Go to the next one, please. So yeah, we have 7 committees in total. Some of the events that we've held are with the Political Action Committee. We've done watch nights in the past, debate watch nights in the past. We have done some voter registration drives. We have an annual Kwanzaa or Celebration of Black Lives event where we celebrate Black lives and Black achievement. We do work boot camps, and we also hold mock conferences where we give students the opportunity to come and present their work. Because we allow all students from all colleges to join, we have a very diverse group, and so that offers time for students to really hone in on areas that maybe they're not fully explaining. You can go to the next slide. And yes, we work with a number of other organizations that have also given their presentations. So the Student Insurance Advisory Board, we've spoken with CAPS, we work with the Office of Equity, Educational Equity Programs, or the OGEP office, and helping with recruitment. And we have monthly meetings. Our next meeting is actually this Friday. And our email address, I don't know, is it on the next slide? Is there a next slide? No, okay. Our email address, oh no, okay. So if you would like any more information, Ashley actually left her email address here, AKS5347. You are welcome to reach out to her if you want more information. We also have an organization email address that I'll just say, it's bgsa.pennstate@gmail.com. So, you know, if you have any other questions, I look forward to answering them. And thank you again for coming back to us.
Yeah, no problem. And last one, I think the DISSA representative is here now. If you could take maybe 2 minutes to or less to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Okay, my name is Masime Asaf. I'm the Director of International Student and Scholar Advising. Can you see me? I can't, yeah. Our office does all the immigration work for the for students and scholars. So we have a pre-arrival group. So if anybody is an international student who's listening, you would have heard from pre-arrival to get your immigration documents. And then we have international student advisors, who are the individuals who work with the students who are currently here and with graduates, because we are still required by law to monitor graduates for 3 years. You can reach us by calling 814-865-6348, and it's option number 2. We do ask that you leave a message because we only have 1 or 2 people on phone duty every day. And if they're on the phone, they can't answer your call. So if you leave a message and slowly give us your name and your phone number, and obviously your ID number helps. We also have, and all international students would know this, we have a software system. The software system is actually called Synopsis, but the portal for the users is called iStart. We have an electronic e-form there. It's called Submit a Question. And you can submit that and get a response from an international student advisor. We also have just recently, and an email was sent out by me to all the international students at University Park and at all the campuses, that we do have contact information now in Starfish. And so you can actually make an appointment in Starfish for an advisor, and it automatically connects to Zoom. And I believe most of the advisors have it so that you can make the appointment up to the same day of the appointment. And the next slide is all the resources and what we do. We advise on immigration and visa matters, employment, enrollment requirements, because international students have specific enrollment requirements by law. We can advise on social and personal matters as well, particularly those that may impact immigration. We authorize immigration benefits, or we recommend them, or we advise on how to get them. We also are required by law to report non-compliance in a system called SEVIS, which is under the Department of Homeland Security. I'm not going to read all of these. One of the reasons I was late was dealing with a Social Security issue. International students can't get Social Security numbers and work without our issuing these letters describing their SEVIS record. And we do give emergency loans. We have a grant and aid fund. It's very, very small. We are actually meeting tomorrow to go through those applications. And in the springtime, particularly if you've had an assistantship, we do purchase software that's for non-residents for tax purposes. It's free software. Otherwise, if you are a resident for tax purposes, then you can use the same software that US citizens use. We provide lots of online training and workshops, and we also bring in attorneys who give workshops on future employment in the US. And that's it. I'll answer questions when they come.
All right, so we are going to open up for taking questions. Please remember to raise your hand with the raise your hand function and wait to be called on. Also, if you don't want to speak, you can type questions into the chat and we can ask them for you.
Diego?
Yes, hi. So my question is primarily directed at the offices that offer graduate assistantships. I was curious, specifically from the library standpoint, as well as I believe the Center for Gender Diversity, how has COVID impacted the way in which these assistantships, graduate assistantships, are distributed, how they're provided? Has there been any change? I'm curious because I know a lot of people that rely on those assistantships for funding.
I can jump in from the Center for Sexual and Gender Diversity. We are still in full force. Our staff, we consider all of our core staff members. Our grad assistant is one of those, has been, again, working both, at different points, fully remote, not fully remote, in person. It's again, all of our staff have been given the option of what is safest for them based on their situation. And that coincides with our graduate employees as well. And so, but yes, they're working remotely and we're working in person until we went to remote learning environments. So.
From the library's point of view, all our graduate assistantships that we had selected to fund were hired. So we've got those students working. They are primarily working remotely. There, I think, are a couple special cases for projects with our assessment department where they're doing some observational work that the GA is in the library space, but following all of the guidelines. So we'll have applications internally for the library to think about new GA positions upcoming in the next couple of months. And so then we'll be reaching out to all of our networks to find students to fit those positions. So the pandemic has not slowed that work happening with our GAs.
Great, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you both.
Ali?
Great, thank you. My question, I think, is for the offices that give services that are credentialed in terms of, so student legal services, the insurance advocate, and probably CAPS. And I'm curious about whether there are differences in services for folks who are not in Pennsylvania currently or in the spring semester. If you're going to be working remotely, is there anything we need to keep in mind in terms of the resources of the services that you offer if we're not going to be in Pennsylvania?
As far as the student insurance advocate, as long as you're a student at Penn State, wherever you're located, she can assist and kind of help navigate. She may not be able to walk through the process of applying for Medicaid in another state, but she can at least give you resources and try to assist you with that. So from an insurance perspective, the fact that you're not here doesn't keep us from helping a graduate student.
So from Student Legal Services, it's a great question because our licenses for the different professionals are all very different, and everyone in this move to remote had to look at their licenses, and everyone's was very different. From Student Legal Services, we can help students wherever they are in the world, and we've always offered telephone and Skype conferences and things like that, even pre-pandemic, because that's not a limitation that our license has. The limitation is we can only advise as to Pennsylvania law because that's where we're licensed. So it doesn't matter where you are, it just matters what the legal issue is, whether we can advise on that or not.
On the CAP side, one of the challenges with provision of health and mental health care is that providers are actually bound by state licensure. And in most cases, you have to be licensed in the state where you are delivering services and in the state where the person is receiving the services. And that really does impact how services are distributed. So the majority of Penn State students are in Pennsylvania that we serve at University Park. And so in some ways that is working out. CAPS can also provide initial response services to any student anywhere in the world. So any student who calls us, this is why I always say, if you're in need, just call and we will help sort it out. We don't want to have students trying to navigate that. So we can provide initial support, same day crisis, and follow-up phone calls. We can provide case management, consultation, all of those kinds of things. What we can't do is enter into a treatment relationship with a student in a state that does not permit us to provide those services. And during the initial COVID rollout in the spring, many states relaxed some of those restrictions, like either the licensing board or the governor. And we did actually get temporary licenses in a lot of the states where many Penn State students come from. Then most of those things expired. And so those services had to change. We have 2 new services in place this year that are really helping us out. They're both kind of pilot projects that were actually started way before COVID was a thing, more than a year ago. One is a telepsychiatry service that was primarily intended for the Commonwealth campuses who are really in need. They're able to provide services in quite a few states where Penn State students are located. So that does work in some situations. And then we also contracted with a new service that provides 24/7 text-based digital coaching. And also that can be increased to individual counseling, telecounseling online. And that is through, and that's a 50-state solution. So when we are talking with a student who lives in a state that we can't find any other services in, that's often a good connection. In addition, it's important to keep in mind that graduate students often have access to insurance that is consistent with the graduate student policy. And that insurance has very good access to tele-mental health services online that are licensed in all states. And in fact, Karen can kick me if I'm wrong here, but I believe it is the case that if a student begins, for example, in a program called Healthiest You, which provides mental health services, even if that student goes abroad internationally, those services can continue in some cases. So there are actually quite a lot of options, but it is sometimes complicated. So I go back to my first statement, which is if you need help, just call and we'll help you figure it out.
And the only correction I would make, Ben, is healthiest, the Better Help was last year. Now it's the Healthiest You.
Right, Healthiest You.
And that's
Yep.
and that's all through the Penn State Student Health Insurance Plan.
Yep.
All right, Emma.
Yeah, my question is for Bailey with CGE. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about professional student involvement in a potential graduate employee union, like whether or not professional students in research assistantships would be reached by this union if it were to be created.
Right, that's a really good question. And so we can't really make that determination. What happens is we do what's called a card check, which is where we initiate this process, and then we go to the Pennsylvania Labor Relations Board, and they determine what the bargaining unit is, and that is the group that will be represented by the union. And so who is included in that likely will not include people like those on fellowships, but as for the various types of professional students, I'm not positive. But again, that's determined by the PLRB.
All right, Diego.
Yes, my question is for Leah with Student Disability Services. So when Ben was talking about telehealth and telehealth services, what are the resources that are in place for communities that are hard of hearing or hearing impaired?
The resources that our office is providing, is that the question? I'm sorry.
Yes, what are there resources? I mean, if you're doing a telehealth appointment and you're hard of hearing or you're deaf, what's the alternative? How is that handled? What does the graduate community, what do graduate students that are part of this community do, and what resources are available for them?
Sure. I don't want to speak for what Ben's providing or anything along that lines, but this has certainly been a new issue that's come up as we've gone remote. And a number of students who are deaf of hard of hearing have had some difficulties in this online environment. So we have been trying to raise awareness across the campuses so that faculty are ensuring things that they are using captioning, right? So we're making sure that meetings are captioned, that lectures are captioned. That includes the live, that includes the speaking, that includes the videos. We're having to give lessons on what a good speaking environment looks like. So making sure that the lighting's good, making sure that we're not covering their mouth, or we're looking, or maybe we're announcing who's speaking in each situation if it's a group dynamic or a discussion. So there's a lot of best practices. We're certainly using vendors who are providing captioning. We're using vendors who are providing sign language interpreting. I think it really just depends on what the individual's need is. And so we engage in those conversations, find out what's necessary. And it has been a huge campaign just to make sure that best practices are being disseminated across the campuses. Did that answer your question, Diego? I want to make sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so is it okay for us, as, for example, as GPSA, to point students in this community to you all if they need resources, as well as faculty that are looking to make their spaces as inclusive as possible?
Yes, please. How do I make that happen? Yes, please point them my direction. Anything that we can do for students or faculty, we're all about it. So if you can help get them to us, I thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Next will be Claire.
Yeah, thank you. I can't raise my hand because I'm the host, but I had a question for student care and advocacy about the student emergency fund. A question I get all the time is what is considered an emergency? So I thought maybe you could clarify that a bit in this platform. Specifically, I hear a lot of times from graduate students that not having access to the right technology is truly an emergency because you can't continue your research, you can't continue making progress towards your degree. But I'm not sure if that fits the Student Emergency Fund definition of emergency. So if you could elaborate a bit on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, and our emergency fund is made possible by donors. So it is a hard fund to be the steward of because we can't kind of count on funds being there long term. So we made a decision early on, actually even pre-pandemic, that really emergency needs to mean that there are emergent needs like kind of revolving around food and housing security. So again, that bottom level of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So if a person feels like they are having to pick between paying their rent or paying for or having food, or maybe they're just actually physically at risk or they're not safe because of this emergent financial need, those are the ones that that's kind of how we're having to define an emergency. Luckily, so food insecurity, for example, like we always, we do a holistic workup with any student that applies for emergency funding to try, because it's a one-time lift. So technically per degree, a student can only receive one award from this fund as it's currently designed. And so we want to make sure that we're kind of exploring every option other than our fund first. And it's quickly, like it's not a long process to kind of explore those options, but connecting them to Lions Pantry, or we've developed a robust kind of just database of not just campus pantries, like Penn State campuses with food pantries, but also food pantries that are locally, like within walking distance of our campus locations, to even just right now, because when we shifted to remote, we just want to make sure to have in our back pocket, like ways to students can secure their food needs. With technology specifically, I will say that our Penn State's IT department has a robust, I would say robust loaner program right now, not just laptops, but hotspots and other equipment. So if something broke, or because we've kind of shifted, if somebody doesn't feel like they have ready access to the technology needs now, or equipment that they need now, it's as simple as completing a ticket through Penn State IT to ask for what a person needs, and that will be actually sent to them. So Penn State IT is able to help at least short term. So these are, it's an equipment loan program. So, but it's free. So they don't get to keep it, but they don't also have to pay for it.
Thank you.
Can I jump back in really fast? Because I just thought of something I wanted to say to Diego, since he mentioned maybe ushering people to our office. When we think of COVID, we keep thinking of remote, and I don't want to ignore what I didn't mention was the in-person experience and how difficult that is for our deaf and hard of hearing community. So I just would be foolish to not mention that we've also been distributing clear face masks for use. And so if you are talking to any students or faculty who are experiencing any difficulty with in-person experience and access, that's a piece of the puzzle as well. I apologize, but I didn't want to leave that out.
No, and this is Kelly Walgast from the Operations Center for COVID. So, and Leah's really advised us as well on how best to be accommodating at our testing sites as well, right? And so that if any student has a need, and we don't know that necessarily, right, until they might show up for that day, we just need to know. And if they go to Leah's office, she can let us know and we can make an accommodation for a student to get testing. And even if a student needed to go into isolation or quarantine, that could pose some unique circumstances as well. And so we want to be aware of that student individual needs so that we can accommodate as best as possible. And really, if it's been ignored or not attended to properly, it's simply because we didn't know enough about the situation. And so we're really open to that in all our COVID operations.
Okay, we have a question in the chat from Sandeep for organizations that are working with international students. He has a lot of funding opportunities and fellowships, especially COVID related, have been restricted to US domestic students. And he's wondering if there is any work being done to expand this opportunity to international students.
I guess that might be directed to me, but it was something that I guess it's something that I wasn't aware of. I do know that with the Penn State Giving that we have raised some funds, but I'm not quite sure what that funding is. If it's fellowships or something else that you might be referring to, it might help to know. If you could send me an email afterwards, I can look into it. It's not something I was aware of.
I can raise my hand. I'll go next. This is the question for the student healthcare. I'm sorry, the student insurance advocacy. So we're going into a season where a lot of people are going to bite the dust and get out of quarantine in their own apartment, going back home to visit families for Christmas and holidays and stuff. I just wanted to know, in the worst case scenario, let's say that a student is not in Pennsylvania and they end up having to go to the hospital with COVID or any other related issues. How does the student insurance essentially work in that situation?
Okay, so the student insurance itself, it works throughout the US. So as long as the pandemic is still in place and the CDC has said it's extended at least now through January 22nd. If anybody is tested positive for COVID, has symptoms of COVID, they've got to do the test because they've got a doctor order. We're talking symptomatic, not asymptomatic. Then that is covered by the insurance at 100%. And all of the treatment associated with COVID-19 is still covered completely at 100%. Asymptomatic is the only thing that's not covered. So as long as the main thing, hopefully, the most facilities are going to be contracted with United Healthcare, which is part of United Healthcare Student Resources, part of them. So I would think if anybody really needs to have services, and especially if it's emergent, they're going to be able to get the care they need wherever they are. There is also a find a provider option on it's at firststudent.com website, which is our Penn State SHIP website by the carrier. And you can find a provider in the area you're going to be. So there should not be any problems. And again, if you have questions or need some assistance, other than when we're on break, winter break, you'll be able to reach out to our office and any of our staff can work with you to help you find somebody in the area that the student is at.
Thank you. We're going to take one last question from Emma. And if you have any other questions, go ahead and type it in the chat box so that it can be answered while Emma asks her question.
Yeah, I just have a question for libraries. I'm wondering what the curbside pickup hours will look like for spring, and also what precautions are being taken at those pickup hours for COVID.
Great question. So the curbside pickup hours will probably look pretty similar to the hours that the library was open for the fall semester. So open during the weekday, usually until 9 p.m. We're working on trying to have a self-service so that you can kind of come and go a little bit easier than what's currently happening, but I don't have a lot of details on that right now. In terms of precautions, we're following guidelines around quarantining items. So when you return an item, we wait 96 hours before we discharge it and get it ready to go for the next patron. And our staff are using gloves and things like that so that there is the least amount of contact happening between items. When you go pick up items, we have them in a little bag with your name on it. So, you know, you're not having contact that way. Lots of hand sanitizer throughout the building near those stations as well. So the best way to know exactly what the hours are is on the library's website. There should be a little petit paterno bar that will tell you what the hours are. And if you're not quite sure, again, the Ask a Librarian feature is great. There's someone there most of the time that can answer that question right away.
Okay, let's see. Since we seem to have a lot more questions going on, we can go ahead and have Brooke look to see, let's see. I believe it's Allie's question is in the chat.
Yeah, Allie, do you want to ask it or do you want me to read it?
Whichever's, I guess I can ask because it'll be quick. I just had a question for Dr. Preston and perhaps for Letitia as well. So what are recruitment efforts? I know you talked a lot about your travel and the on-campus STEM open house, and SROP obviously had a big on-campus component. What does that look like now? And are you anticipating challenges in terms of recruitment for your programs?
I would say, so I started typing it, so I saw your question pop up, but to answer you, so both of our programs were held virtually. The Summer Research Opportunities Program was held virtually, and we had to pivot it to a professional development sort of seminar where we engaged with students in that manner. Because we didn't want to water down our program, so the Summer Research Program brings in our McNair scholars who have to do their research during the summer, as well as our recruiting scholars. So for McNair side of the house, they did the professional development this summer, and so they are doing their research right now during the school year. So that part worked out okay. For our professional development series, which was developed for the summer research program participants that would normally be housed during the 8-week program, it pivoted to professional development where we engaged with students and then brought them into our STEM open house if they were eligible. And we're sending them swag bags and packets and things like that for marketing and engagement, but it's a womp womp, in my opinion, if you think about it, in the sense of a student really wanting to be present and visible on campus and engaging with scholars as well as the faculty and staff. And then, yeah, anticipate challenges recruiting. Yes. So the other thing is the virtual experience for conferences. I don't know about you, but people are zoomed out, people are tired, right? It did pose specific, it gave us an opportunity to engage with scholars in a different way, because the scholars that came to our booth, our table, our Zoom room, we were able to break them out into breakout rooms with faculty who participated as part of that recruitment process and engage with them that way. But the number of students we would normally see at a table that we could send blasts to or just follow up with, very minimal. In the price of the conferences are extreme. You know, when you think about it, if you think about just the regular registration, so think about booth registration, you're looking at $1,500. And if we normally see an upwards of maybe 200 students at one particular conference, we saw 50. So we're looking at different ways of recruiting our students and primarily targeting our HBCUs, HSIs, and TCIs. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I had a question I just put in the chat for Dr. Locke and perhaps student care and advocacy. I'm not sure if it's super relevant, but for students without access to private space at home that need to have sensitive conversations, is there space on campus that is available to students, or maybe off campus, but I imagine on campus is probably the easiest option to have sensitive conversations? with CAPS, with other offices that have those kinds of conversations?
Great question. There are spaces. They are variable in terms of their hours of operation, capacity, and access points. And so I think if people are experiencing difficulty accessing a private space, they can reach out to our office. I think Anna may also have access to this. Brian, others may have access, but there are resources that are available. Some of them are just part of the room registration system within the university, and there are some other individual offices that can be made available. So I think if folks are experiencing that, just reach out and we'll help folks get connected. If other people are aware of a centralized sort of comprehensive solution, I'm not sure if there is one that's publicly posted beyond kind of room registration.
Yeah, I'm just concerned because I know some students haven't reached out for resources because there's no place that they can talk. So some central place would be great.
Well, and students' needs vary quite a lot. And so reaching out to make a phone call while walking from a building to another can be always a good starting place. And Claire, I will track down a list of the resources and get them to you, and you can put them out to your group here.
Yeah, I have been told that outside does not count as private for having a so I don't know. That's I've been told.
I wasn't suggesting that outside is a private conversation. I was suggesting making a phone call to start a conversation.
I see. Got it. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Ben said, that we do, we're super flexible in terms of when we connect with students. So if a student knows that a particular time they have access to a private space, we'll do our best to make that time work. We've also been able to use a chat function and chat via Zoom with students without needing to talk or have them be overheard. So with limited options, we're still trying to be kind of creative with what we have to work with.
My dog's going to bark in the background, but I will say the map.psu.edu, the remote learning link on there also gives some remote learning rooms and other options there as well. So locating those on campus. So those are on, again, map.psu.edu, and some of those locations might also serve as a secondary space.
So, and I just put in the chat a whole pile of information, and Claire, I'll send that along to you as well. And, I think it's important to keep in mind that one option is not necessarily a solution for everybody. And there's a lot of rooms at Penn State. So people may have different needs, different locations, may not be at Penn State, and may not be in the state. So we're always happy to work with folks to try to figure that out. And one thing that's worth noting is the tele-coaching platform that we're able to offer students who are a good match for it this year is text-based and is open 24/7. So it is something that students can access without a private space in the same way. We found that to be helpful for some students who have some challenges there. And I'll send you the document as well as that mirrors what I pasted in the chat there.
Awesome. Since we're out of time, I am going to turn things over to Diego. But first, I would like to thank the panelists for being here and also everyone else for attending tonight. We will be making the recording from this evening available in the near future. If you still have any questions or think of other questions later on, don't hesitate to reach these offices and organizations, including GPSA. Diego?
Yes, hi, I won't keep you all much longer. I just wanted to thank every single one of you. Your organizations and your offices are hidden heroes. And my goal as a representative, as a member of GPSA, is that your organizations are not hidden going forward and that you're all highlighted. So I just want to thank you for taking the time. It's dinner time, we're all hungry, we're all zoomed out. So thank you so much for being here and for providing all this incredibly useful information.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Night,
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Thank you.